I'm not getting any sound on your end. Hello? I still can't hear anything. Not getting any sound through the computer or the phone.
My technical difficulty.
Okay, you can, all right, we're gonna let Chris do his again.
All right, the application you're reviewing today is an amendment to the existing CSP for 2415 Ivy Road. In 2021, a certificate of appropriateness was issued for the development in the CSP. Since then, construction's been completed and several signs have been approved. In June of this year, sign applications for Great Coffee and Selvage Brewing were submitted that weren't consistent with the CSP. The amendment removes one improved sign location, adds two new sign locations and types, and adds white as a letter face color to accommodate these signs for in tenant spaces on the east side of the building. Through building renovation, created traditional storefronts with side and bands on the south elevation or elevation that faces Ivy Road, and maintain much of the industrial character on the east elevation. The existing CSP provides a unified design by limiting the allowed sign types and locations. The proposed signs, a hanging sign, and a projecting aluminum cabinet would add a creative component to the plan while maintaining unity and simplicity. The signs match the industrial character on the east elevation, and the variation between the south and east elevations allow for new sign types that without creating an uncoordinated appearance. Regarding the selvage sign, it was noted in staff report, the sign height exceeded the roof line, which is not allowed in the zoning district. However, since the staff report, the applicant revised the height to meet the sign height required by ordinance. Staff recommends approval of the proposed sign and the CSP amendment with changes listed in the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris. That was even better than the first one. Just in case any questions have percolated since the last time I asked, Dave?
Still no questions. Thanks.
Frank Stoner?
No, thanks.
Frank Hancock?
No, thank you.
I still don't have any questions either. So now is the time for the applicant's presentation.
All right, Keith, go ahead and state your name and who you're representing, and you'll have 15 minutes starting when you start talking.
All right, my name is Keith Wagner. I'm representing Tally Sign Company in Richmond, Virginia. How do I share this thing?
Have you tried share screen? Yeah, you have permission, so you should be, there you go.
Okay. So Chris pretty much tackled everything. This is the front of the building. Looks really nice. The all the letters are the same color except for that banner, which I think is gone now. All the lighting is exterior gooseneck lights. This is the side elevation that we're going to be working with. It's still kept very much industrial from when I believe it was a John Deere dealership. We're proposing two signs. Got the Grit Coffee. It's an aluminum cabinet on the bottom, PVC letters on top, and it's going to be hanging from the existing canopy. The Selvage Brewing sign is going to be on the corner, mounted with 90-degree brackets. I did this before we revised it, so it will not go over the roof line. It's another aluminum cabinet. The letters will be the only thing that light. The background is opaque. It's just a closer view. It's going to be hanging from the steel right there, and one more. Like I said, the background is opaque. It's not going to emit very much light, and that's basically it.
All right, well, thanks for that presentation. We'll just see if any board members have any questions, starting with Frank Stoner.
No, I don't. Thanks.
Dade?
No questions. Thanks.
Frank Hancock?
No, I don't have any questions.
And I don't have any questions either. Are there any members of the public who want to make a comment? Doesn't look
Have
like
none.
anyone. So the ARB will now go into discussion. We'll start with Frank Hancock.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation, and it seems pretty straightforward to me. It's a different condition than the front elevation with kind of the recessed facade due to loading dock, and so I think these sign like hanging off the side and then mounted to the corner, I think make total sense, and I think graphically or color wise, I think they fit in very nicely. So no, I don't have any comments other than that.
All right, thanks. Dade?
Yeah, I think it's a nice proposal. Like Frank, I appreciate him outlining sort of the logic. The building sort of has a front, a side, and a back, and the sign types evolving that way. Seems appropriate.
All right, thanks. Frank?
Agreed. I don't really have anything to add. I think they're appropriate solutions too.
Thanks. And yeah, I agree with all that. I think it's appropriate and tasteful. And so I guess if we could take a look at the recommended motion.
The motion is, or the recommendation is to approve the revisions to the sign plan and approve the signs for Grit Coffee and Salvage Brewing with the conditions listed in the staff report.
All right, I'll just run through and see if anybody has any tweaks. Dave,
No, looks good to me.
Frank Donner, Frank Hancock?
Nope.
Either. So would anybody care to make a motion?
Be happy to move for approval to approve the revisions to the 2415 Ivy Road Comprehensive Sign Plan and the signs for Great Coffee and Salvage Brewing with the conditions listed in the staff report.
All right, thanks. I'll second that. So if we could put that to a vote.
Mr. Henningsen,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwood.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. We will move on to our next review item, which is ARB 2024-59, Community Christian Academy. And
Okay. This is still a proposal to construct a modular classroom building and related site improvements at the property located at 114 Old Brook Road, which is the corner, the north corner of the intersection with the Rye Road entrance corridor. The site is occupied by a church, a parsonage, a playground, and a parking lot. And the modular building would be located behind the parsonage as viewed from the entrance corridor. And that's approximately 210 feet from the property line and another 50 feet from the sidewalk. A special use permit was approved for this use in September. The approved concept plan showed the modular building envelope in the general location of the existing parsonage. The zoning has determined that the current proposal, which retains the parsonage now and places the modular building to the east of it or behind it, that it is still consistent with the approved concept plan. The proposed building is a prefabricated modular structure. Each building elevation has multiple windows, and the site plan shows building entrances on the north and west sides. The structure has minimal detailing, and mechanical units are proposed on the long walls, including the one that faces the entrance corridor. The modular building has little connection to the historic architecture of the county. As with most structures of this type, its form, materials, and features are distinctly utilitarian. The building is expected to have some visibility from the street, so the primary issue is mitigating the visual impacts of the building form and the wall-mounted equipment. Given that location of the building, it's anticipated that this mitigation can be accomplished primarily through landscaping and by choosing a compatible color for the walls of the building. There is some mature landscaping on this parcel. The proposal includes the removal of 3 trees. Those are the ones that are circled in red. There are 5 trees along the perimeter of the parking lot facing Rio Road. 2 trees are existing along the perimeter of the parking area that faces the parsonage. There are 2 interior parking lot trees, and there are 4 trees near the parsonage that are shown as to remain. And that includes a 24-inch mulberry, that's the one that's highlighted in yellow, which is located very close to the proposed building site. The parking lot and frontage trees do not meet entrance corridor guideline standards. That's not unusual. This site predates the establishment of the entrance corridor. The proposal does add landscaping to the site. It's a mixed group of trees and shrubs located between the parsonage and the modular building. In this image, the evergreens are marked in the darker green. The layout of that proposed planting does seem a bit crowded. Trees are typically spaced about 10 to 12 feet apart, and it looks particularly cramped between the 2 buildings. Our recommendation is that the landscaping along the modular building be limited to evergreens placed to mitigate visibility of the mechanical equipment, and that trees and shrubs be added along the western property line. That is the one fronting the entrance corridor. That would bring the landscaping there up to guideline standards while reducing visibility of the modular building. Landscaping there would do more to increase the orderly appearance of the site and would help integrate the development into the overall corridor. Adding trees and shrubs along the eastern perimeter of the parking lot and along Old Brook Road would bring those other elements of the site up to guideline standards and increase screening as well. We've also made some recommendations for minor changes to the site and architectural drawings for consistency and for standard information. Our recommendation is to make the revisions listed in the staff report. Happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thanks a lot, Margaret. Guess we'll start with Frank Hancock.
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Margaret.
Dade,
No questions either. Thanks, Margaret.
Frank?
The only question I have relates to whether this would be considered a temporary or permanent use, given that it's a modular building.
I think I will defer that question to the applicant.
All right, I don't have any questions. So if the applicant has a presentation.
All right, good evening, typically here in the evening. Good afternoon, Chair Henningsen and members of the ARB. My name is Kelsey Schlein. I'm a planner with Shimp Engineering. I'm here today representing Community Christian Academy. Also here with me is my colleague Julia Moore. She's a landscape designer in our office. Kimberly Moore, who is the director of Community Christian Academy, and Todd Cothran, who is the pastor at Cross Life Community Church, which is the property where Community Christian Academy is located. I dragged this up, but maybe try this again. Okay. Yeah, it's a PDF. Yes. Okay, that needs to be dragged. Oh, my bad. I dragged to the wrong one. Thank you. Okay, try this again. All right, thank you, Margaret, for the presentation. So we're looking at this property here, as Margaret said, that's at the intersection of Rio Road East and Old Brook Road. Rio Road is the entrance corridor here. Before kind of hopping into some more details of our proposal, I wanted to just go over a brief timeline and Community Christian Academy's needs for this modular structure. So in September, they obtained an amendment approval to their special use permit application. Shortly thereafter, 2 weeks after their approval, we filed at the next filing deadline their ARB and site plan amendment application showing this modular structure to be constructed on the property. The goal here is to have this modular structure operational by August of 2025, so the next school year. And Kimberly and her team are very much on a time crunch to make that happen. So just looking at the timeline going forward, we're at the ARB initial review today. We'll be working on revisions and resubmitting as soon as possible, but are really hopeful that we can get this installed and off the ground, and so that Kimberly can utilize these classrooms in the upcoming school year. So looking at the site overview here, so this is the location of the existing parsonage. This is the approximate new modular location. And then this is the location of Cross Life Church, and also where Community Christian Academy currently operates out of. And this is the site plan that we submitted showing the new proposed modular building, as well as some new ADA parking spaces and ADA routes to the proposed entrances to the modular building. I wanted to go over kind of future plans for this property because I think it'll really help us to frame our discussion about in specific landscape on the site. We really kind of hope to be very intentional about the placement of landscaping on this site to mitigate visual impacts from this proposed modular structure, but also to ensure that the landscaping we install can remain in place throughout future phases and hopeful future development on this site to continue to serve Community Christian Academy and Cross Life. So I'm going to talk through kind of some of these site improvements and general expansion plans that we've worked through on the site and that we anticipate moving forward in the next few years. So what you're looking at here in the orange is a potential area for a future parking lot expansion to work through rearranging the existing parking layout and adding additional parking spaces to have a better drop-off loop for Community Christian Academy, and also just to have some additional parking on site as it's currently pretty tight in this parking lot on Sundays. You can see the location of the proposed modular building here, and then a potential future building expansion. So none of these future proposal other than the modular building is on the site plan before you today. I just felt it was important as we discuss landscaping and the placement of landscaping, that we can also discuss about future plans and making sure that the landscaping we install can just remain on the site in the future. So this is showing the parsonage location, and so with a future parking expansion, that would be removed at some point. And so talking about landscaping and especially some of the recommendations that ARB staff put forward in the staff report, we would really like to focus on landscaping along the entrance corridor to mitigate visual impacts. There is an existing cedar grove here, just a kind of few little patch of cedars that will remain as part of this site plan. But additional landscaping directly on this eastern side of the parking lot, we would like to, discuss maybe mitigating the impacts from the corridor elsewhere on the site, as we imagine that the parking lot will be expanded and that landscaping will be compromised in the future. As far as the landscape recommendation for mitigating impacts of the HVAC equipment and adjacent to the modular building, we definitely think we can accommodate that. But we really would appreciate keeping the landscape focused close to the modular building and then along the entrance corridor here. And additionally, any landscaping that we need to discuss on Old Brook Road. And this is just kind of conceptually showing there is some existing landscaping here along the edge of the parking lot. And so these existing trees, which exceed entrance corridor spacing, would be supplemented to meet the 35 on center, and then also supplemented with ornamentals and some additional shrubs to screen the parking lot. And this is just kind of showing the view from Rio Road and the approximate location of the modular building here. Another item that we just wanted to bring up, since the release of the staff report, we were able to talk with the modular supplier about proposed building treatments. Hardy panel is a facade treatment that they often install on these modular buildings. And this modular building, I would say, is largely the same that we see on public school sites across the county. And so Kimberly and her team are interested in doing a Hardy panel siding. I know in the staff report, it was mentioned that we, might do some type of metal siding. I think we're definitely interested in a Hardy panel here, and some type of beige tone. And so we've identified a steamed chai for that color. And we can present these all with our resubmittal, but I just wanted to bring up an alternative material that we're considering. And that is all that I have for you. I, along with the other members of our team, are available for any questions you have, and I appreciate the opportunity to present this project to you. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your presentation. Guess we'll start with Frank Hancock.
Great presentation. Good to see the future plans and the kind of reaction to some of the comments. It's always good to see that. I don't think I have, maybe a question about the Hardy panel, and maybe that's not as developed, but the orientation of that, will it be horizontal or vertical, or I don't know if there's any.
I think, so I've been told by the manufacturer, and I could also let Kimberly weigh in on this as well, as whether she has a preference, but I know he said that in the thousands of structures that he's installed, he's never done, he's only done the Hardy plank once with the, horizontal. And so we're definitely going to stay away from the plank. He said that's really difficult to do on these structures. But then as far as the orientation of the Hardy panel, vertical or horizontal, we haven't gotten into that just yet.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Dade.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate the color option you present. Question, is it possible to get the mechanical units painted to match?
That's a good question. I'd have to run that by the manufacturer. But we can definitely ask that of them and with our resubmitted materials, respond to that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Frank?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Same question I asked Margaret before. Is this building conceived of as a permanent structure, or is this sort of a temporary solution with the idea that at some point in the future there would be stick build?
Yeah, so definitely it will be in place for at least 5 years. And, you know, I think the idea is that with this future building expansion back here, that the additional classroom space can be accommodated that they need. So I would say it's the intent that it's temporary, but I think as, you know, we often see the lifetimes of these structures, you know, might last a little longer than original intent because they do serve a purpose and much needed space. But at the onset, it's 5 years that we're looking at.
Okay. Great, thanks.
I guess my only question is the proposed landscaping that's going kind of right in front of the building. That's mostly evergreen. And if the parking lot expansion occurs, would there be additional infill in that row of evergreens? Right now, it seems like half of the building is already, or half of the building location's already screened by existing trees. And the proposed screening is kind of like filling in the gap of that. But if the existing trees are removed as part of the parking lot expansion, would there be, in your mind, kind of an infill of that screening that's right in front of the building site?
Yeah, absolutely, especially because, you know, once we expand the parking lot, we kind of fall under making all the improvements necessary for interior parking lot trees and perimeter trees. And so certainly there will definitely be a bunch of additional landscaping with future phases.
All right, thank you. So are there any members of the public that want to make a comment?
I have no one online.
All right, doesn't seem like there's anybody in person. So the ARB will now go into discussion. I guess we'll start with Dave.
Yes, I appreciate the application and presentation. Appreciate the applicant's transparency about the potential future developments of the site. I think the location further back from the entrance corridor is probably positive to the degree it mitigates visibility more. And the parsonage will at least initially mitigate visibility. I think I will be interested to see in the resubmission the specific landscape proposal and understand how that screens the, in particular, the mechanical equipment, but the development in general. But it seems like a suitable siting and proposal otherwise.
All right, thanks. Frank Stoner.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Dade. I am sensitive to the possibility that a lot of the existing vegetation, particularly around the existing building, could go away in the future. And also sensitive to the fact that if the building's only there for, let's say, 5 years, the ability to effectively screen in 5 years is somewhat limited, just given the growth rate. Most of the species you'd probably plant. I think it's a reasonable proposal. I think the reality is the visibility, at least from the entrance corridor now, is going to be very restricted just because of what's there. Old Brook Road, would be nice to see some additional landscaping there. But otherwise, no comments.
All right, thanks. Frank?
I'll agree with my colleagues. I think staff's comment about adding plantings along the entrance corridor and the applicant's willingness to do that, I think really helped the application. I think screening closer to, you know, the road where you'll be your vantage point will be, I think will help. So I feel good about that, and I agree that it's pretty far back, and I think you'll just get glimpses of it. I don't think, you'll have this full facade view in any one spot, so. Yes, those are my comments.
Thanks. Yeah, and I agree. I think, the landscaping closer to the entrance corridor is, gonna be the best place, because that's the added benefit of screening the parking lot itself also. So I guess if we could take a look at the recommended motion.
As soon as we switch screens, I'll be able to show you.
I'm sorry.
So our recommendation was for changes to be made to the plans as listed in the staff report to come back to you for another review. Based on the conversation, I have struck through number 10, which said, consider adding trees and shrubs along the eastern perimeter of the parking lot. And through the portion of number 11 that also talked about parking lot landscaping. But I amended number 7, which is the requirement for the entrance corridor frontage trees along the west side of the parking lot, and added the shrub requirement there. I'll just point out that number 9 references trees along Old Brook. Just not sure if everyone was on board with that one. Looks
Right,
like the applicant might want to have another word.
There's a motion on the table. I don't mean to interrupt, but Kimberly actually just brought up a really good point. For number 12, the mulberry, I know we have that shown as to remain, but since we submitted, she's brought up to me that those berries before they ripen are toxic. And so they've been planning to take that tree down regardless. But they've had a few kids get sick and it's caused them problems being right in the playground. And so we will likely be removing that as a tree to remain from our site plan since we submitted. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that in my presentation.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. I guess, yeah, if we just strike the reference to that mulberry. I'll just run through and see if anybody has any tweaks, starting with Dade.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry, I added number 13 also. Consider painting the mechanical units to match the siding color.
Thanks.
I appreciate Margaret's updates and I think it looks good.
Right. Frank?
Yeah, it looks fine to me as well.
Frank?
No edits.
Me either. So anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to provide the applicant with the comments listed in the staff report for ARB 2024-59, Community Christian Academy, amended as follows to be addressed with the next submittal. Update number 7 with added language and shrubs 24-inch in height at planting. Strike item number 10. Revise item number 11. Revise item number 12 and add item number 13. Consider painting the mechanical units to match the siding.
All right, thanks. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
Thanks. We could put that to a vote.
Right? Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, our next review item is ARB 2024-61, Holly Hills. And Chris, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon again. The proposal you're now reviewing is to construct a first phase of residential development consisting of 318 apartment units in 6 buildings and associated site improvements. Site is located on the east side of Route 29, just south of Hollymead Drive. The ARB recommended approval of the initial site plan on August 19th of this year, The proposal, the primary focus of staff reports is on the architectural design of the apartment buildings, landscaping of the site, and site improvements. There are 3 visually similar architectural designs proposed for the apartment buildings. The overall designs are contemporary in style, but feature forms and building materials that reflect those used historically within the county. The elevation of these buildings use forms, colors, and material changes and projections and recesses to help reduce the uniformity and break up the massing of the building. The height of the buildings varied with changes in materials and colors, but the length remains somewhat uniform. Revised and designed to use contrasting colored downspouts would provide visual breaks that would further reduce the apartment building's massing. A landscape plan has been provided with the final site plan. The plan identifies trees that were planted with the construction of the existing shared use path along Route 29 and trees in the landscape buffer that are to remain. Due to existing utilities, the plan does not show a row of street trees, but the proposed landscaping within the buffer exceeds the spacing required by ordinance and similar to the surrounding context. Plan also shows trees all along Archer Ave and below Viola Drive, along some of the buildings and along the parking lots. However, the trees provided along the interior roads and sidewalks does not meet some of the guidelines, including tree size and spacing. The pedestrian trees are positioned behind buildings and are unlikely to be seen from the entrance corridor. However, the trees along Archer Road will be visible from the entrance to the site. Staff recommends revising the landscape plan to show proper spacing and caliber size to meet the interior road tree requirements. The site plan's also been updated to show a small portion of the retaining wall west of Building 3 terrace with landscaping between the wall and the parking lot, and existing trees to remain west and south of the wall. However, the wall is largely unterraced. The maximum height of the lower wall is 12 feet, and trees at the base of the wall are expected to provide minimal mitigation. Staff recommends revising the site plan to terrace the walls so no portion exceeds 6 feet in height. Regarding the townhouse blocks located to the rear of the site to be constructed in phase 2 and 3, due to the intervening apartment buildings in the first phase, distance, topography, the townhouses are not expected to be visible, and staff recommends that ARB review of these blocks not be required. Our recommendation is approval of the final site plans with the revisions listed in the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris. We'll start with Frank Stoner.
Thanks, Chris. I don't think I have any questions at this time.
Okay, thanks, Frank.
I don't have any questions. Thanks, Chris.
Dave?
So I guess with the stormwater management facility that's in the tree buffer, is there an illustration or an exhibit that makes it clear to what extent there are or are not trees or can be trees in that zone?
Landscape plan probably gives the clearest illustration. There is also a note in the plan that plantings would be planted in the stormwater facility as allowed by county, DEQ, and I believe another agency. So I believe what's shown on the landscape plan is probably the extent of the plantings they're currently proposing. I'm not sure if that's the extent of what's allowed within the facility. The applicant would probably be better answer that question.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I don't have any questions. So if the applicant has a presentation, now would be the time.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, ARB members. Second. All right, I'm Chuck Rapp, Collins Engineering. I also have Dustin Shu here from the architecture team and Joe Murray from the development side. Give you a bit of an overview of the project. I think Chris did a great job explaining everything. This is an overall illustrative rendering, shows the multifamily, shows the buffer, and then the townhome units to the phases 2 and 3 that'll come later. This is Archer Avenue that does run right through this development. It'll connect to Archer North, formerly known as RST. That's has a rezoning application to amend that plan now with Riverbend Development, and then that Archer Avenue continues across over to the Brook Hill Development and all the way down to Polo Grounds Road. So kind of a new parallel road that runs along 29 on that one. Couple of existing photos of the site with trees on this one. This is from earlier in the summer. Here's that storm pond. It is a VDOT storm pond. I'll speak to that. Hopefully answer your question on some of that stuff. There's kind of this wooded berm from when they did the 29 Solutions project. You have the multi-use path, and then you have this maybe 5-6 foot berm that's pretty grown up with all different types of stuff that runs along the frontage. During the initial site plan review, I believe it was a ARB request to have us go out there and survey the trees within that buffer. So you have a 70-foot buffer and then a 30-foot disturbed buffer that will be replanted. So we went out there, surveyed all the trees. What you see in the light gray are the existing trees. And then I've gone in and proposing to plant additional trees to fill in those gaps. So we have a full buffer along that whole corridor there wherever possible. There's really only one spot where we have a little bit of limitation where we had an existing storm pipe that runs underneath 29 and over. So there's an easement on that, obviously. And you can kind of see the disturbance there, but again, still trying to plant as much as we could up against it to create a uniform buffer along that whole frontage there. So you do have some pretty large mature trees throughout there. And over time, hopefully it'll all grow up to be a nice buffer and continue that pattern that we have running along Route 29 from prior projects. With the storm pond. So this is that existing storm pond that was built as part of that 29 Solutions project, VDOT maintained, and this would be a similar approach to what happened in front of Brook Hill, where the existing basin was expanded. Our plan is to replace that chain link fence with more of a decorative aluminum picket fence, black picket fence. And then add plantings. I tried to kind of do something similar to what was done in front of Brook Hill. Just figured that was a decent precedent of doing something a little more that would look better with some flowering shrubs and some evergreens and things like that, flowering trees along the frontage. And then I put in some larger trees in the back. It's a pretty steep slope, so we can plant this front side, to an extent. I don't want to get too extensive with the plantings because it is a 2-to-1 slope. So don't want that to cause some issues in the future, but we just can't plant on this backside where we have the dam. But on this front side, we can certainly add more stuff if desired. Chris did mention this retaining wall. We've been working with our civil team once that comment came out to see if we can reduce that. And I think by eliminating 1 or 2 parking spaces on the end here, we'll be able to get enough room to terrace that wall, another terrace to make it a little lower, so it doesn't have that height issue. We've also been working to try and adjust. So Archer Avenue is a curving road, so there are utilities that run down at storm, water, sewer, make it somewhat challenging with straight runs of those utilities to try and avoid them with all the trees and get the equal spacing. But we've been able to do some creative stuff with the catch basins, I think, and pull those closer to the road, some of the piping underneath them, some minor adjustments. So I think we can get a better spacing on those trees as well. So we'll no problem adjusting some of that. We did work with Dustin and his architecture team to produce some of these views. We have views showing the existing trees and then with the proposed trees. So you can see that storm pond, some of the flowering trees, the shrubs that'll be up front of it, along with the topo of that area that dips down into the where the outfall is. Again, existing trees that would be remaining. And then with the planted trees along the street, trying to kind of dress up this entrance, make it much more inviting. It is a road that'll serve more than just this development though, so we want to keep that in mind. But the idea is to really have an attractive front entrance here and eventually some kind of sign when you get closer to the apartment buildings. And another view running down Archer Avenue there. Do you have a nice median at the front there where I was able to put some more columnar trees down front of that, and then the larger shade trees on the side. Again, another from 29. The topography on the other side varies quite a bit. It drops off on the other side here where that storm pipe comes out. So you can kind of see a lot of new plantings here. That's why it's kind of void of vegetation now. So we'll replant that significantly and work through that. With that, I think I will turn it over to Dustin to talk about the architecture and answer any questions you'll have on that.
Thank you, Chuck. Good afternoon. My name is Dustin Shu. I'm with RJTR Architects in Atlanta, Georgia, architect for this project. Thank you, ARB, for having me. Beginning with the architecture of the apartment buildings, what you're seeing on the screen is what we're calling building type A. There are 2 of these buildings on the site. Is a 3-4 split, 3 levels on one side, 4 levels on the other. Starting with materials, we have predominantly fiber cement lap siding, horizontal in the gray and the light blue, horizontal blue. As it goes up to the very top where it transitions to the white, we have fiber cement, board and batten. We also have board and batten in these tower elements which delineates the entries to the buildings. These tower elements also allows us to project a little higher so that it helps us break up the roof as well as the elevation and gives us a nice kind of bookmark to the buildings. The roof material is asphalt shingles, and we really try to break up the facade as much as possible. Windows are vinyl with pre-finished aluminum railing for the balconies and Juliets. This is building 8.1. We have 1 of these buildings on the site. It is the exact same as building A, except instead of a 3-4 split, we just go to a 3. So 3 levels on this one. This is our building B type, we're calling building type B. This is the larger building on site. We have 3 of these buildings on site. Same materials as the building type A, with it being a longer elevation, we try to break it up by having these kind of undulations on the units. And that helps us break up the roof elevations as well, so that we can try not have one long facade. I know there was a comments regarding trying to break these up with downspouts and gutters. The gutters and downspouts being a different color, we can definitely look into that being like a bronze to match the aluminum railing to help that. This is the back elevation of building B, and then the front elevation, which is the 3 side. This is our clubhouse, 1 clubhouse on the site. We try to make this one a little more contemporary to distinguish it from the apartment buildings. Building materials is fiber cement boards with reveals. The main roof is a TPO flat roof, and the side roofs are metal seam, kind of dark bronze color. Here we've changed the colors of the windows from a white to a dark bronze color. And this is just the other 2 elevations of the clubhouse. There's an two exterior fireplaces in the patio. We recommend doing painted brick at those fireplace areas. There was a note on the staff report for including the trash compactor enclosure to help screen the trash. Wanted to let you guys know we were aware of that. So this is our compactor elevation, pretty straightforward. It kind of goes into the site. I think the site goes into a little bit. So we have a cast in place retaining wall concrete, recommended painting it gray to match the buildings. We have a brick water table to help with some of the durability, and then transitioning to white fiber cement lap siding to match the rest of the buildings. The front gates would be dark bronze metal corrugated. I believe that's it.
Happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
All right, thanks a lot for that presentation. Guess we'll start with Dade.
Sure, this may be more for your architectural colleague. Could you clarify which building faces are 3 and which are 4 stories in relation to the entrance corridor?
This is their, yeah. So rule of thumb, I guess, is where the parking is, where the parking locations are 3 sides. So building 1, this is 3 and 4. Building 2, this is a 3 and 4. Building 3 is 3 stories. 4 is 3 and 4, and 5 and 6 are 3, 3, 4, 4.
Thank you very much. And then one follow-up, appreciate for your civil colleague, appreciate that there may be a way to step the retaining walls. Would there be room to add any additional parking lot trees in that parking lot?
Certainly.
By building?
It kind of just depends if we can get enough room in that retaining wall. What we're pinched in is a stream buffer, where you have these outfall pipes. And then we also have the retention pond. So I'm kind of wedged in between the two. So I think want to make sure we get the retaining wall terraced. And then we have some undisturbed vegetation we're trying to keep here, just to create a little more of a screen. But I'm certainly, we'll try to fit whatever I can in there without damaging the wall and whatnot. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, there were a few comments, staff comments about additional landscaping on the side of these buildings. That's not a problem at all. So plan to do that.
Frank Stoner.
Yeah, thanks. With regard to the retaining walls,
Mhm.
Chuck, I don't recall seeing a rendering that where they were visible. Are they?
They're not really, just because you have so much vegetation in between the two already, planted or existing. And then like I mentioned, this here is a whole undisturbed area, about a 50-foot strip. And so you just, there's a lot going to be in between. I can get to those kind of renderings. So you can, let's see. Yeah, I mean, you just can't see much back there by the time you get through it all. This is that building we're talking about, back here. So you have the retention pond goes down, then it comes back up, more vegetation, and then the retaining wall. So they're pretty far back there. They're about 150 feet back from the road.
Is the idea that you would have enough room between those if you terraced it in order to plant?
I think I would try to keep it either on the high or the low side rather than stick it in the middle of the terraces, just because of the chance of root damage to those. Those will be segmental walls, I assume. And so I don't want to create a structural issue with them. But if I can get something up on the high side, I think that'd be the ideal situation. You kind of see in that one. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking. Maybe there's enough room to get more of a strip on the top area. If I can pull that back a little further, that way we could plant some trees up there. That'd create a little more of, I mean, it wouldn't hide the walls, but it would hide the buildings a little more if that's the goal. If we'd rather hide the walls, certainly plant some stuff on the low side.
And the elevation of that building relative to 29 is, I should be
Oh,
468.
trying to think here. I mean, I believe the building sits lower still at that point,
Yeah.
than 29 does. You can just kind of see the amount of fall. It doesn't seem to be coming up that much, unless you have it off the top of your head. No. This one view might show us, I was gonna see if the road, I mean, it's relatively flat as it works its way around, but you can kind of see that building is there. You kind of have a natural, right now, there's an existing berm that's, this whole area is built up.
That remains.
That'll remain, yep. I figure we'll plant it and kind of do a traditional subdivision entrance type landscape up top.
My only other question is architectural, and it is sort of what the thinking was behind the blue that was chosen, which feels like a really sort of coastal blue.
Yes, we were trying to keep it kind of a lighter feel to the project, so it's not so heavy. But we are open to changing the blue if needed. It was mainly just to try and keep it light, that sky.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Frank Hancock.
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Great, thanks. I don't have any questions that haven't already been asked. So are there any members of the public that want to make a comment?
I don't have anyone online.
Nobody's physically in line, so the ARB will now go into discussion. Guess we'll start with Frank Hancock.
Sure. It's a nice application. I feel like there's so much variation along the entrance corridor there with the berm, with the site plan, how it locates the buildings. I think what's nice is the longer building type is oriented perpendicular to the entrance corridor. So I think just given the siting of the buildings, and then you have the clubhouse building that kind of steps down and it's a different feel. I think there's gonna be a lot of variation and it's not gonna feel like a mass. Cause there isn't a lot of detail in the elevations. I think if one of these buildings, specifically the longer building form, were just smack dab along the corridor, I think we'd be really zeroed in on more architectural detail or some ways to break it up, but given the variation with the stormwater facility, the berm, how you have the boulevard entrance, I think is really nice. And a pretty substantial buffer, planted buffer. I feel like, you know, it's appropriate. I did write down blue siding color, and I didn't know if it was a function of the rendering, and it was really pronounced in the shadow in the rendering, because when you look at the color sample, it almost looks like a super light gray with a tinge of blue, but in that rendering, in the shadow lines in the rendering, it looks like, I thought the same exact thing. I was like, this is something you'd see at the beach, and I don't know how I feel about that. So I think if that's something we add, maybe to consider, you know, an alternate color there, but all in all, I think it's a nice application. I don't have any additional comments.
All right, thanks. Dade?
Great. Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. Appreciate the work the applicant did to document the trees in the buffer. I think that's been an ongoing concern for some of these buffered areas is how actually the board and then zoning ultimately assures that the buffers that are assumed, actually remain and can be monitored. Appreciate the applicant's willingness to look at increasing, within some limits, the trees within the stormwater facility and adjacent to the parking by building 3 and those retaining walls, I think, just to assure even more that the building is screened effectively and similarly to the other areas behind the buffer. I'm glad my colleagues brought up the color. I also felt like it was very coastal, so would similarly encourage the applicant to think about some alternative options. And Frank, I agree with your comments about the siding and how that mitigates the length and detail of that building type. So, but yeah, a nice presentation, lots of renderings that make it helpful to understand.
All right, thanks. Frank?
Yeah, overall, I think the landscaping plan is pretty effective. I think Chuck raises an interesting question with regard to these walls, site walls, and we see them everywhere. And while they do look better terraced, if you can't landscape those terraces, effectively, when you're looking at it from a distance, particularly if you're below the wall, it kind of looks like one wall. So I don't know, Margaret, if is landscaping that would be approved that wouldn't have structural implications that, whether it's vines or whatever that could grow down the walls, but if not, in this case, I don't think the wall's visible enough to make it really an issue. But there's certainly sites where it has been an issue, and it'd be nice if there was an alternative to no landscaping. I would also encourage you maybe to think about a different color. The only other thing that jumped out at me, and it's not, I wouldn't put it in as a requirement, that there didn't seem to be much of a connection between the architecture of the clubhouse and the architecture of the rest of the project. It's obviously your choice to do what you feel is appropriate. But it felt, it felt like it was from a different project. So you might consider at least some elements that maybe tie together the two, but otherwise, I thought it was a good application.
All right, thanks. I don't really have much to add that wasn't already said by my colleagues. But I think it was a good proposal, and hopefully with just a few minor tweaks, it'll be 100%. So if we could take a look at the proposed motion.
I'm dragging it the other way. It's on laptop. She can't get it to move over. Oh, there it is. There it was. There it is.
It's a good technology day today. The recommendation is for approval with the conditions listed in the staff report. Based on the conversation, I've added a few items at the end. 17, add interior parking lot trees south of Building 3. 18, consider adding trees at the VDOT stormwater facility. And 19, consider revising the clubhouse to include elements that would tie it to the apartment building designs.
Okay, does anybody have any changes they'd like to make, or
No.
if not, does anybody feel like making a motion?
I'll move to approve ARB 2024-61 Holly Hills Development Phase 1 with conditions listed in the staff report amended as follows. Add item 17 to add interior parking lot trees south of Building 3. 18, consider adding trees at the VDOT stormwater facility. And 19, consider revising the clubhouse to include elements that would tie it to the apartment building designs.
I should just also point out that number 1 does say that the ARB review of townhouse blocks in phases 2 and 3 would not be required. So just wanted to point that out, make sure everyone's in agreement with that if that stays in.
I support that. I guess
Yes.
Yes.
anyone. All right, it sounds like that's a consensus. So I guess I'll second the motion. So if we could put it to a vote.
All right. Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Henningsen.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. And since this is about when I have to go, we will move on to other business with Frank at the helm. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
everybody.
Chris. Could I have the gavel, please?
Give me one this time.
Have a good one. All right, let's see where we are here. We're down into other business. Let's start with approval of the October 21st, 2024 minutes. Do we have a motion to adopt the October 21st, 2024 minutes?
I'll move to adopt them.
Second.
Could we call the vote?
All right, Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business, SP 2024-20, Carter Machinery, outdoor storage, display and sales. Chris, do you have an update or?
Yeah, if you all recall, this concept plan was reviewed at the last meeting, and the ARB recommended revisions to the concept plan to be reviewed prior to planning commission review. These revisions are being reviewed today. The couple of things, or a few things, or actually I should say several things to note on the revised plan. It's been updated to show a staggered double row evergreen. a staggered double row evergreen screening along the security fence between the parking lot and frontage. Increased planting area has been shown along the frontage and landscape islands along the west side of the building to remain. The limits of the outdoor storage area have been updated to show the boundaries. And then notes have been added to show where chain link and security fencing would be proposed. Just kind of a recap of staff's thoughts on these changes. All right, jumping back and forth between screens and getting stuck. Yeah. In the L-shaped planting island along the western parcel boundary, it has a note that says landscape material to remain. However, based on a site visit, this vegetation has been removed with the establishment of the temporary building and the storage area on site currently. This status, the existing status is the vegetation being removed would need to be updated in the concept plan. The limits of the storage area have been defined, but the limits of where the taller equipment will be stored is unclear. Staff has added a condition to the action to address this. The planting area along the 13 space parking row is very narrow. The existing planting area along the frontage could be used or should be used to make the space wider. And it's also unclear if the security fencing remains the metal picket fencing originally proposed and the chain link fencing along the eastern side of the property will likely have visibility from Route 29 and will likely need to be security fencing. And staff has also added a condition to the action to address this.
Thanks, Chris. Do we have the applicant on?
We should.
We do. Mhm. Mr. Carter, please or Mr. Berkeley, please. Who do you want to talk to? Connor? Connor, sorry. Connor, I'm gonna promote you and then you can unmute yourself and you can talk. All right, go ahead, Connor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let's see. So I can just follow up with Chris's comments. There were eight comments since following the previous meeting regarding the concept plan that we addressed. I'll just stick to Chris's comments currently and then engage with any questions you all may have. The proposed landscaping fronting Rio Road, you can see that at the west side, it starts at about 3 feet in width and moves down to 6 feet in width. So that's a really constrained area here. The median is already very narrow. While we by ordinance don't need the number of parking spaces based on the retail square footage, we really don't want to lose the parking on that side, especially for any future sale or renovations to the building or expanded retail square footage. And so that's kind of our compromise in extending the median on Rio Road while still maintaining the parking spaces there. That's the maximum extent that we can do that while meeting minimum widths for the drive aisle and parking spaces. The security fence will be the same as previously proposed. The see-through black aluminum, the double row of evergreens we confirmed with our landscape architects. That's a 9.5 foot width that we'll be able to do a double screen there. We will update the concept plan for the vegetation that's been removed on the western side, and also the visual impacts from 29, wherever there's a see-through corridor. We can add landscaping there and clarify that on the concept plan, or if it's already in the conditions, we'll stick with that. But I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you. Dave, do you have any questions for staff or the applicant?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Frank Stoner?
No, I don't have any either. Thanks.
I don't have any questions either. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment?
I don't have anyone online.
Nobody online? The, the ARB will now go into discussion. Starting with Dade.
Sure, I appreciate the applicants and staff's quick follow-up from the last meeting, and I think in general, it looks like an improvement. I can understand the commercial reasoning behind preserving some parking capacity and do feel like the proposed landscape enhancements are a nice gesture to improving the corridor.
Thank you. Frank?
Yeah, quick question for you, Margaret. Is the county in position to approve a 24-foot wide travel aisle in a parking lot? 24, 18, and 18?
24, or the 26 is.
26 is what's shown.
Shown, but
Question, yeah, my
24
question
would be
is-
the ordinance, so it is 2 feet wider than what's required by ordinance. So there.
So they could pick up 2 feet in that landscape zone,
Right.
either
correct,
on the,
Correct.
and I think at our last hearing, somebody indicated they were gonna make some changes to the building itself, but that would be a separate application. Is that true as well?
Yeah.
Well, something to consider, given how squeezed they are at the west end, I guess, of that sort of little landscape buffer. Otherwise, no real comments. Appreciate the applicant's efforts to address our concerns. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'll just add, I appreciate the applicant taking a look at the, I guess, west side of the building, the area between this building and the library. I think formalizing that a little bit will make it feel less like a kind of no man's land and more defined as to who goes where, and also provide a little bit of screening on that elevation, which I think will be nice. I agree with Frank that the added 2 feet is just so narrow there. If we could even get like a row of shrubs, I think would go a long way. So I would agree with that. Are there any additional staff comments?
Frank, sorry for my own understanding.
We have an additional comment.
Yeah, are you proposing that those 2 feet be dedicated to some planting adjacent to the building or enhancing the width of the planting near Rio?
That's a good question. Now that I see the site plan, I'm remembering, I think we had talked about that up against the building, didn't we? Yeah, there's also a sliver of planting along the road too, so. But I think, yeah, softening that edge of the building would make sense. Sorry.
Is there low planting outside of the property line there?
That was the kind of point the thought staff brought up of, I'm not sure if it's just the concept plan rendering, but this seemingly includes the existing planting area outside the parcel boundary, but it would allow an increase. So there could be an increase in planting area without a decrease in the travel way potentially if it's shown overlaid correctly onto the site of this is the, let me jump to. This area. Seemingly corresponds with this area.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Any additional questions or comments?
And one additional staff thought it's been brought up in the list of thoughts was the proposed chain link fencing along this parcel boundary would also have the potential to be visible through entrances to the sites along Route 29.
How far off
Other-
29 would those, would it be visible? Any idea how far it is from 29 to the chain link fence?
Okay.
I think there's still potential to also see it from Rio, even with the landscaping added out along the front.
What's the security fencing look like? We have a-
Is it black chain link?
No, what's on the front though? The-
Oh, the,
We have not received a detail on what type of
On the
chain
front?
link, chain link fence it's
Yeah.
proposed.
The
And
other-
it's about 378.
378
Yeah.
feet. What about the other fencing that would be along Rio?
That would, applicant confirm just now in their presentation, that would still be the black metal picket, security fencing that was originally shown, during the last meeting.
Which is not opaque, right?
Correct.
I don't know. I have less heartburn about.
I agree. I think you're looking through a lot of buildings and parking lots. Yeah. Any other questions, Margaret?
I didn't hear those last two comments.
Oh, sorry, I was just saying to Frank, I have less heartburn over the visibility from 29, just because I think it's far enough away and it's broken up with buildings and cars and. I assume part of the reason why they want this type of metal fencing is initially they wanted people to be able to see the equipment. And I kind of wonder why you wouldn't put an opaque fence on Rio. You're putting all that double row of evergreens.
I
It'd
think
be
that
cheaper to.
this fence design looks like something very similar that's in our guidelines for screening and security fencing. And so since chain link is typically used for security fencing and guidelines say no chain link, then this would be a more decorative option that similar to security fencing that's been approved in the entrance corridors previously. If you get a solid fence for screening, then there are additional guidelines for making that work. And I think that's probably harder to achieve.
And I guess
Thank you.
to add, conjunction with other site development is, the site highlighted here is the site of the former Wendy's that, if you recall, a discount tire was approved and building permits have been reviewed and, or submitted and reviewed and approved. So that is also potentially increase the visibility of that area between kind of site construction and construction of that discount tire.
Thank you. If there are no additional comments or questions, could we look at the recommended motion?
So what we have is updated recommendation for conditions of approval for the special use permit. 1 through 4, which is the black text, is the same as what you saw previously. And based on the conversation today, we've added 5 through 8. 5 limits the storage of the taller equipment to the area towards the back of the site. 6 is the requirement to adjust that note that talks about existing vegetation that's already been removed. 7 would reduce the travelway to 24 feet to increase frontage planning area or to add landscaping along the building. And 8 is a standard entrance corridor guideline. Chain link fence must not be visible from the entrance corridors.
Any edits, questions for me? No. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to recommend no objection to the proposed outdoor storage display and sales as shown on the revised concept plan with the following revised conditions. Items 1 through 4 as originally proposed by staff, with the additions of item 5, storage of equipment taller than screening fence height is limited to the area labeled existing gravel area at the rear of the site. Add item 6, update the plan to address the existing vegetation to remain. Note where landscaping has already been removed. Add item 7, reduce travel way to 24 feet to increase the frontage planting area or to add landscaping along the building. Add item 8, chain link fence must not be visible from the ECs.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Could we call the vote?
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner,
Aye.
Mr. Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to other items. Any other items from staff or board members?
I have one other item. I guess,
Yes.
so I think
Oh.
members are aware that
Wait,
the,
Mr. Connor, Mr. O'Donnell has his hand raised now.
oh, is there something from the public?
Well, he's the one that was speaking to you earlier. I can.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Mr. O'Connor, just unmute yourself and you can talk. Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I apologize. I was trying to get in before that vote was taken. I just had one request on the reduction of the 26 feet to the 24 feet. If we could remove that from these conditions, our engineer, because we've not had a survey, we're on the ground, he spaced it at 26 feet because we're not 100% certain yet on the actual distance and what we'll be allowed to do. And so I just want to be careful about being constrained within those actual measurements. And this will come before you again for your review as part of the site plan approval for the major site plan amendment. At that point, we would have exact dimensions prepared. And these 2 feet in front of the drive aisle, I'm hoping is not so directly relevant to the outdoor storage and screening that's a condition that we could remove. And then again, you all would see at site plan approval and more directly related to the facade of the building. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mike, could we leave it and then review it at site plan? Do we need to go back and address that now? I mean,
If
or
you're,
a conceptual plan at this
yeah.
point?
if you're okay with waiting until the site plan and you don't think it needs to be a condition of the special use permit, I think you should just make a motion to take that comment from the SP conditions and move it to the final site plan comments. And we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll move to remove that comment from the motion and move it to the final site plan comments.
I'll second.
Could we call the vote?
Mr. Vanderwerf,
Aye.
Mr. Hancock,
Aye.
Mr. Stoner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving on, any items from staff or board members? Dade?
Sure. So briefly, I'll just share, I think recently the Central Virginia chapter of the American Institute of Architects honored the Architectural Review Board with the Community Service Award. So I'll just briefly read the text of the award. The Community Service Award is awarded to celebrate an individual's or organization's significant contribution to the built environment or towards the public's awareness of the built environment within Central Virginia. The County of Albemarle Architectural Review Board has contributed remarkably through public advocacy and by upholding the integrity of design in Albemarle County, making an undeniable mark on the spaces in which we live, work, and gather. So on behalf of board members, I'll express my thanks. And if folks would not object, I would love to dedicate the award actually to the county staff who really make all this work quite possible and whose efforts underlie that recognition.
Agreed.
I agree, 100%.
Thank you all.
Thank
That,
you.
that's very kind, and we would be happy to display that in our offices. Thank you very much.
For the record, there was lots of applause. Include that in the minutes.
Standing ovation.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Dade. Any other items from staff or board members? The next ARB meeting is scheduled for November 18th. Do we know if board members can attend or planning to attend?
I'm here.
I will not be able to attend.
I believe I'll be here.
Then let's see, the meeting is adjourned, to the next meeting on Monday, November 18th, 2024. It is 2:51 PM.